Hi, my name's Ruby. I am pretty. If you see my previous videos, I'm pretty sure you know me by now. So this time we're gonna be talking about learning. So hopefully we get to by the end of this video you get to know a little bit more. So let's see. Let's get started. So classical conditioning, Pavlovian conditioning. So learning is a relatively permanent or stable change in behavior as a result of an experience. So classical conditioning was first described by Pavlov. So as you can see there's a picture of um, the dog. So we can see here first before conditioning how the food is unconditioned stimulus and the dog is salivating, which is the unconditioned response. So naturally the salivation is produced by the food. Um, and then we can see how before the conditioning we can see the whistle is a neutral stimulus, and no salivation is it's like the not conditioned response, because that wouldn't make him salivate. During the conditioning, when paired the neutral stimulus, which is the whistle, with the food, which is unconditioned stimulus, the response will be salivation, which is unconditioned response. It's still the unconditioned response. So now after you condition in various times in trials, you can see how the whistle now is a conditioned stimulus because it produces now the salivation, and that salivation is called the conditioned response. So it's a process which makes it pretty much classical conditioning. So classical conditioning occurs when a neutral stimulus paired with a previously meaningful stimulus eventually takes on some meaning itself. The condition is another word for learning. Unconditioned response is another way of saying unlearned response. Conditioned stimulus is initially neutral stimulus, like the whistle. The unconditioned stimulus, the US, is initially meaningful stimulus, the food. Unconditioned response, naturally occurring response like the salivation to the food, and the conditioned response is the response to the CN after the condition salivation to the whistle. So forward conditioning is which the CS is presented before the US and can be further divided into delayed conditioning, in which the conditioned stimulus is presented until the unconditioned stimulus begins, and trace conditioning, in which the conditioned stimulus is removed some time before the unconditioned stimulus is presented. So forward conditioning has been found to be the most effective at modifying behavior. So we're going to talk about Little Albert. So Little Albert by John Watson, a study where Albert was first tested and found to have no fear of small animals like a rat. So though he did show some fear whenever a steel bat was raged loudly with a hammer, afterwards Albert cringed and cried any time he was presented with a rat, even though the noise wasn't made. Furthermore, Albert showed that he was afraid of other white fluffy objects, the closer they resembled a white rat. The more he cried and grinched. So the main generalization. If Albert could distinguish among similar but distinct stimulus, he would be exhibiting discrimination. So this is a little video that I put. I think it's gonna take too long for this, but if you like, go back to it and click on it, and then so it's just a little summary of what we pretty much the little Albert experiment. So we're gonna keep going. Acquisition takes place when the pairing of the natural and neutral stimulus, the loud noise and the rat, have occurred with enough frequency that the neutral stimulus alone will elicit the conditioned response, cringing and crying. So extinction or elimination of conditioned response can be achieved by presenting the conditioned stimulus without the unconditioned stimulus repeatedly, that the white rat without the loud noise. So spontaneous recovery is where the original response disappear in its own, but the elicit again by previous conditioned stimulus at this later time. But it is also possible under certain circumstances, as I say, if little Albert once again presented with the loud noise with the white rat, his fearful response to the white fluffy objects would appear without him having to be retrained. This proves that association are still formed in the brain. So the second order conditioning is a previous conditioned stimulus now is used as the unconditioned stimulus. It is a special case of higher ordering conditioning, which the theory can go up to any order as the new conditioned stimulus are linked to old ones, rarely effective. So contingency approach, the pairing of a neutral conditioner stimulus and the natural unconditioned stimulus occurred because they're paired in time. Contingency approach is the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus get paired because the conditioned stimulus comes to predict the unconditioned stimulus. So now we're going to be talking about operant conditioning. So operant conditioning, also referred as instrumental conditioning, involves an organism's learning to make a response in order to obtain a reward. The response is an action not typically associated with obtaining a particular reward. Was first discovered by Edward Thorndike, who proposed the law of effect, which states that the behavior is more likely to recur if reinforced. B.F. Skinner pioneered the study of operant conditioning. He designed Skinner box, which had a lever and a hole through which food pallets could be delivered. Skinner trained the rats to press the lever in order to get food. In order to get rats to learn to press the lever, the experimenter would use a procedure called shaping, in which the first rat receives the food and reward by being near the lever, then by touching the lever, and then finally by pressing the lever. In the end, only get rewarded by pressing the lever, differential reinforcement of successive approximations. So pressing the lever is one type of response and food is another, is a type of reinforce. Neutral reinforcement is a stimulus that doesn't need to be learned or be reinforced, like food, water, sex provide primarily reinforcement. Secondary reinforcement is provided by learned reinforces. Money is only paper, but as we learn, we can exchange it for other forms of reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is a reward or an event that increases the likelihood of a particular type of response will be repeated. Negative reinforcement is the removal of an aversive event in order to encourage the behavior. So omission training seeks to decrease the frequency of behavior without holding the rule until the desired behavior is demonstrated. A schedule of reinforcement refers to how often an organism receives reinforcement for a given type of response. Continuous reinforcement schedule. Every correct response that is emitted results in a reward. This produces rapid learning, but also results in rapid extinction. Partial or intermediate reinforcement schedules. Not all responses are reinforced. Fixed ratio schedule is one in which the rewards always occurs of a fixed number of responses. Variable ratio schedule is one in which the ratio of responses of the reinforcement is variable and unpredictable. Examples, the slot machine. You never know where you're going to get the reward or the money. Fixed interval schedules is one in which the reinforcement is present in a function or fixed periods of time, as long as there is at least one response. Variable interval schedule reinforcement is presented at different time intervals, as long as there's at least one response. Oh, sorry, I already said that. Token economy, an artificial economy based on tokens. Learned helplessness occurs when consistent effort fails to bring rewards. If the situation persists, the situation will stop trying. Biological factors. Donald Hebb proposed that human learning takes place in neurons forming new connections with another by the stringing of connections that already exist. Eric Kandel, a neuroscientist, examined classical condition and epilepsy. Kandel paired the light of touch of conditional stimulus with a shock with an unconditional response. This pairing causes the epilepsy to withdraw its guild, the unconditional response. After training, the light touch alone can elicit the guild withdraw, now a conditional response. So Kennedy found that when a strong stimulus such as a shock happens repeatedly, special neurons called modulator neurons release neuromodulators. Neuromodulators strengthen the synapse between the sensory neuron, one that senses the touch, and the motor neurons, the one that withdraws the guild involved. Long-term potentiation, a neuron basis for learning, namely a psychological chain that correlates with a relative stable change in behavior as a result of experience. So social learning, observable learning is a learning based on observing the behavior of others as well as the consequence of that behavior. Because this learning takes place by observing others, it is vicarious learning. Alba Bandura, known as this research, involved having children watch films adults beating up inflatable clown dolls called Bobo. And in some of fields, adults were rewarded for this behavior and others were punished. When the children were allowed to play with the Bobo doll, Bandura additionally demonstrated that observing a response reward relationship was not necessarily for a certain learning to occur. The film showed that an adult attacked a Bobo doll and another just ignored it, and when they had no consequence, then and when we let the children alone with the voodoo doll, shows that the kids that saw adults attack did the same. This illustrates the power of modeling and affecting changes in behavior. Conditioned state aversion, also known as the Garcia effect. John Garcia demonstrated that animals that eat food that results in nausea induce a drug or radiation and will not eat the food as they will never encounter it again. Stimulus generalization. Let's say you eat a peach and you get sick. You may never want to eat the peach again, but you may also develop an aversion to other similar fruits, such as nectarines. So Edward Tolman tried rats to run mazes to obtain food reward, and the maze at first are slow, but the practice are faster and direct to food. When the direct way was blocked by the rat, took the correct but longer way to get the food. Clearly, the rats had mental representations in the form of some kind of cognitive map of the layout of the maze. The rats showed latent learning, or learning that is not outwardly expressed until the situation calls for it. So that is it for learning.